Hey everyone, welcome to Play Hard, Love Hard. Today we're going to be focusing on cannabis awareness and some of the benefits that you might be able to get out of using cannabis and potentially other drugs. I know this might be a bit of a sensitive topic for people who have a bad experience with drug abuse or other people that have abused drugs or maybe even people who have overdosed. But I think that's why it's so important for us to have this conversation today so we can see the benefits of how we can make that better and hopefully prevent that from happening again in other people's lives. So I'm going to have today's support and help from Dr. Michele Ross. She is
Hi.
hello, say hello. She is a leading psychedelic researcher and educator, as well as a fibromyalgia patient. She founded the first 501c3 nonprofit on cannabis for women's health in 2013 and is now CEO of Infuse Health, an online platform for cannabis health coaching. Dr. Ross is the author of Vitamin Weed, a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency, and has a doctorate in neuroscience. So again, hi, Michele, how are you?
I'm good. Those are all such big words. So science of cannabis is not an easy thing at all. So if you can't even say it, how can you even understand whether it's right for you? So that's been part of my big job, is exploring cannabis and exploring other psychedelic drugs and understanding how they work for myself and for others. So I guess we'll start at the beginning, right?
Yeah. So how did you first, what kind of geared you towards even wanting to research more of these two topics, like the psychedelics and the cannabis use? So maybe we can start there.
Well, I was always obsessed with brains since I was 5 years old. I was reading medical books and I was like, I want brains. And my mom either thought I was crazy, like I was going to be a serial killer or something, or I was like a zombie, something was wrong. But I chose the right path and decided to instead become a neuroscientist, which is someone who studies the brain. I don't do brain surgeries on humans. I only used to do them on animals and rats to be able to understand how drugs like cocaine and cannabis and legal drugs like Adderall or Prozac impact the brain, and try to figure out whether we could make better drugs for mental health or we could make drugs that helped people get off of drugs. So I grew up in front of a crack house in New Jersey. So that's why I'm so obsessed with helping people with drug addiction and mental health issues. So literally it was sort of a blessing to be obsessed with the brain, because that's where a lot of this stuff happens, right? We choose, unfortunately, to make bad decisions based on a lot of trauma, a lot of pain that we're holding in our hearts and in our brains. And so if we can heal the brain, we can usually heal a lot of the person.
100%. Yeah, and definitely that's where it stems from, right? From the self, to be able to have control of your mind and to understand that if you do decide to use a drug, that really you have the power to control the experience. I think that that's something very powerful to understand when, before even entering any kind of experience with any drug, whether it's even like you said, like a drug that a medical doctor would prescribe, that it really starts like within, like how is it going to affect my body, understanding where you are at with your body and how might that experience happen.
Yeah, the one thing I want to stress for everyone is that one of the things I studied was what makes person have these risk factors for becoming an addict. And again, I don't even like the term addict because it stigmatizes people that use drugs. In fact, like, not only do people use drugs, but animals use drugs. Dolphins will get high on puffer fish and things like that. So all animals like to experience pleasure. And most of us can actually experience pleasure and even experiment with the not so legal drugs if we're not in a state of stress. The number one reason why people turn from experimenting or using drugs and feeling under control and turning into substance abusers is stress. Number one. I mean, you can have the genetics. Some people are genetically inclined to abuse drugs and if you know that you have a family history of drug abuse or things like that, you should probably reconsider taking drugs, even if they're prescription drugs, because you can abuse Xanax, you can abuse antidepressants, and you have to know yourself and know what's right for you. And if medications are not something that you can handle responsibly, then there's other ways to deal with stress and mental health issues, anxiety, depression. You can do exercise, you can change your diet, you can do a lot of different things to help yourself in case you are unfortunately wired for addiction. Now, the nice part is that a lot of people will think that they're wired for addiction, and it turns out that they're actually not. So a lot of times we're programmed to think badly of ourselves. So, okay, I was depressed. Somebody told me I was depressed. I'm hopeless. I've been on 20 different drugs. Like, I'm a depressed person and the medication can't even fix me. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. Like, this is my life. I'm miserable, lonely, etc. I can't connect with people. But really, it's about finding purpose and finding something that fits with your chemistry. And that's really what I love about cannabis, because unlike any other medication out there, this plant has hundreds of chemicals in it, and they all do different things. They bind to different receptors. They turn on dopamine in our brains. They turn on serotonin. They turn on all the same things that the prescription medications will do for us. But it seems like there are all these different chemicals that work differently in different people's brains. So there's chemicals that are sort of like lavender and relaxing for us. There's different chemicals that help us focus. Basically, there's a cannabis product with different chemicals that's a perfect fit for someone. So there's hundreds of products on the market. If you've ever been to a dispensary or ever heard about cannabis, you hear these different strains. Like, there's a Jack Herrera, there's a super lemon haze, and they're not just to be funny. These strains and these products have different types of chemicals in them, and some will make people happy, some will make people sleepy, some will make people more creative. The nice part is there is something for you, and if you have this experience where you think that cannabis is bad, it's only something to get high, or it's something that is never going to be medical, or it made you say paranoid.
Maybe it's not even a fit for you. I know you were talking about that last time where you're like, oh, this wasn't even really a fit for me at first, but
Yeah, let me talk. So my experience with cannabis is sort of funny because I never thought I would be a cannabis scientist. Actually, that is the farthest thing, because I went to school growing up in front of a crack house. Like, I was going to cure everyone I knew from drug addiction. And so I never thought the answer to drug abuse was actually another drug. And it's sort of weird, like, it's sort of crazy how this all happened. So, when you're a little kid and somebody tells you Santa's not real, I had that moment as an adult, and I'm like, so cannabis, I'm studying it, and it's supposed to be an illegal, horrible drug of abuse that is making, everyone go to jail, and, and people are ruining their lives with cannabis. And then I'm studying it, and I'm supposed to be looking at how it's harming the brain. And in fact, cannabinoids actually grow brain cells. So it was just like, we're like, what?
We're like, maybe it's not that bad.
We actually found, as a neuroscientist community, of course, I didn't do all the research in the world, but what's exciting is other groups were finding things like magic mushrooms will grow brain cells. So it turns out that any drug that promotes serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter in your brain that makes you feel good, it's what Prozac releases. All these drugs, antidepressants, grow brain cells, and so does cannabis, and so does magic mushrooms. So
that's cool.
It's so cool. And it was very confusing because I'm paid by the government to study bad drugs. And so I'm finding the drugs I'm studying are actually good for the brain in moderation and used appropriately, right? Everything can be used out of context. But it made me question a lot of things. And I wasn't a cannabis user myself. As a scientist that's funded by the government, you're not allowed to touch any drugs. And cannabis is still illegal. It's still a Schedule I drug. So cocaine is a Schedule II drug, which means the government in the United States thinks that cannabis is more dangerous than cocaine, which
What? No way.
Isn't that nuts? It is nuts. And that contributes to the stigma, right? You're like, it's even worse than cocaine. And I'm like, people die from cocaine. Do you know a single person that's died from cannabis? Nope.
No.
It is impossible to die from cannabis. In fact, even if you have what's considered a psychotic episode, which can happen if you are prone to schizophrenia or some other emotional issue, and you should always talk to your doctor in case you are on psychiatric meds before ever consuming cannabis, because you might have a reaction that isn't ideal, and you definitely don't want to be in the ER being like super paranoid or having some kind of manic episode. But for the most part, most people can consume cannabis and nothing happens to them except they're sleepy, they're more hungry, they have the munchies, they're laughing a lot, like nothing bad happens. You could eat 20 brownies and nothing bad will happen. You won't die because we don't have the receptors in the part of the brain that controls breathing. There's no cannabinoid receptors there, but there are receptors for opioids. That's why people can unfortunately stop breathing and die due to opioid overdose. So there's no cannabinoid receptors there. So cannabis is safer than opioids.
Yeah, totally.
Safer than alcohol. It's safer than anything, actually. It's actually a little crazy.
I argue that with my mom all the time. I'm like, she found me smoking weed when I was like 15. And I was like, Mom, like, honestly, weed is so much safer than alcohol. Yet, why is alcohol legal? That's something that I've always questioned myself at a really young age. So, I love that you're here.
It's funny because I also face a lot of stigma for my work, right? So we talk about teenagers and young people, and especially young people even means, over the age of 18. So your brain is still developing until the age of 25. And a lot of people ask me, as a neuroscientist, how can you be okay with people using these drugs while their brain is developing? And yet we have no problem with people getting blackout drunk when they turn 21 with alcohol. It does actually more damage to their brain than the cannabis would. And when we talk about cannabis, it's also important to know that there's different products and different ways to use it. So, you can smoke cannabis, you can use drops, you can eat brownies and things like that. And some of the harms that we see on maybe younger people, like, in their young teenage years using cannabis is actually from the smoking part. So if, for example, if they ate a brownie instead, they might not see some of those negative brain changes. So it's all about using it in a way that's intelligent. And this is what I have to say about teenagers. A lot of them are self-medicating. Yes. So what that means is that they are depressed, they are anxious, and they're not getting the treatment that they need, or they've tried, the pills that their psychiatrist, says, I'm just a normal teenager who's depressed because I'm being bullied at school, and instead I'm being handed a pill that doesn't make me feel good or right. So instead I found a joint and that made me feel right. Yeah. And so we stigmatize that, we punish them, we take away their scholarships and things like that for using cannabis, where in fact, in other countries, they are now embracing that, potentially for some young people and for, adults, that cannabis might be better for them than the psychiatric drugs that they're prescribing.
Yeah. And it's funny, like you said, where, they're willing to give them other chemical drugs that are just quote unquote, like approved by, medical doctors, but yet it's still a drug. It's also going to affect the way that their brain is growing, so why not create an experience or more awareness as to this natural, like supplement, this supplement that is literally growing from the ground. I think that that's also a big reason why it's so much healthier in a way if you know how to use it. So again, now let's go into where do people get this awareness? How can we create these experiences in a healthy form of using the products where it's not going to turn into an abuse, but more so, an opportunity to really learn more about ourselves?
Absolutely. So the nice thing about cannabis is that it is actually a psychoactive substance, or it's something that changes your perception. And what I like to think about it is rewiring your brain. So cannabis can actually help you forget certain memories. And if you're using it in a negative way, that's you're in isolation, you want to forget, like, you know, your crappy relationship, your crappy job, some like traumatic experiences that happened to you, and you're just smoke and you're in your room and like that's it, you know, and you're not using it in the most productive way for you. When we're talking about using cannabis as a tool for self-growth and actually even overcoming trauma or an abusive childhood or something like that, which I'll touch on, I had a horrific childhood and it was something very shameful to me. And I actually wasn't able to make stable friendships when I was in my, you know, young teenage years and into my 20s because I was carrying around that trauma. I couldn't connect with people and I didn't want people to know that I was broken. So I didn't make a lot of friends. I just worked all the time. That's all I did. And I was really lonely. And it wasn't until I stopped working in the colleges and universities and I started using cannabis that I was able to actually feel like I could know someone, like I could let my guard down. And I realized I was like, wait, other people like me. I'm creating these false images that people hate me and don't want to be around me. They actually really enjoy my company. Maybe I don't suck so bad after all. And it was weird. Like I kept having these experiences where I was like, they like me. I'm normal. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And for somebody who has an abusive childhood, those things, those are such simple things. Like you are wonderful and amazing and people like you, like everyone has friends, right? But when you carry around that kind of trauma, you're broken. And so cannabis really helps you activate these parts of the brains that are almost like hugs. Like to be honest, it releases a hormone called oxytocin that is released when you have orgasms or hugs. So you start to like love yourself, and then you start to like see yourself in a different view. And when you love yourself, that's the only way that you can start to love and connect with other people. So I like to say cannabis helps catalyze connection, compassion, and community. And so compassion is for yourself and others. Connection is, you know, being able to connect with other people, whether it's, you know, in person, whether it's online, which I love using social media as a way to connect with people online with video, you know, or positive social networks, not the ones where we're dwelling on, you know, trying to be one up each other. Yeah, which unfortunately is a lot. Like we live in the comparison world right now. But I'm all about people connecting online and virtually, and then building that community. Once you realize that there are like-minded people out there with your same values, with your same interests, and there's all these different apps and things like that can help connect you with people that like to do the same things you do, you can get out of your shell. You know, and then you can start building that community with people. I love to use cannabis and say go on hikes and meet other people, or use cannabis and do yoga. And that's one of the reasons why I founded Infused Health, which infused is sort of infusing cannabis into our daily lifestyle instead of just treating it as a negative drug or as a medicine. It really is a lifestyle. And so it's so important that we're mindful of using it in ways that help expand us. You know, use it while you're painting, use it while you're doing fitness, use it while you're meditating, and you're able to actually break through and, you know, finally relax or connect or do whatever you need it for, because we all have different reasons how we work with the plant. But I think that there's so much potential with this plant and with being able to open up the hearts of people. Once we're not lonely anymore, right? Once we can love ourselves, there's a whole future out there. You know, we can change the world. If we love ourselves, like we can all change the world. Like that's step one.
100%. Yeah, you know, this is definitely like, I think where even my motivation for this show is, it's like, can we love ourselves first? You know, can we create that connection first? Because we're so afraid of intimacy. You know, intimacy is like such an uncomfortable feeling, you know, to allow, like you said, for everyone to see your brokenness. It's really uncomfortable. And so, you know, if this is just a tool to allow yourself to first start to get to know yourself and who you are. And, you know, maybe we can even bridge that into other psychedelics. You know, like you said, mushrooms, I think, are a beautiful experience. I'm a super promoter for psychedelics for that reason. I
Yeah,
know.
well, it's so funny when you say that, because then you get like labeled as like the drug pusher. And it's so funny because if you're a pharmacist or if you're a doctor, you can have 30 drugs and you're like, which one do you want? And that's not a drug dealer. But when you're promoting cannabis to heal trauma, or you're talking about using magic mushrooms, even small doses of them, to be able to open up creativity or to be able to reframe something horrible that happened to you and be able to move past that, like, you're a drug dealer. And so I want people to know that there's actually movements across the country that are happening where they've been using psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, to help people deal with, experiences like when they're a terminal cancer patient and they know that they're going to die, or they have PTSD from something and they've used magic mushrooms to be able to actually, hey, get rid of their symptoms like 100%. And I've been actually part of the Denver group, which will be the first city to legalize magic mushrooms in the
Oh,
entire country. Yeah, I was one of the founding members of that group, and it was sort of crazy. We're like, is this the right time? And I was giving a lot of cannabis talks, but I started giving cannabis talks to groups that were talking about magic mushrooms. And I said, hey guys, if we're able to legalize one plant, how about we try to legalize this fungus, right? It doesn't make sense that something that comes out of the ground is wrong for us to use, especially because it has religious context. It comes
yeah.
from indigenous people, and it was wrong for society to say that we can't use these tools, right? We are humans, and as long as we're not hurting ourselves, we shouldn't, be restricted on how we use things and how we, connect with ourselves, our God, or each other. And it seems wrong. I understand if you're going to like cook meth somewhere or something, like, that's dangerous. And, just like we don't want people to have like cannabis extraction labs and with explosive devices and things like that, we want to keep people safe. But there's nothing wrong with a mushroom that grows outside that you can pick yourself in many, many states, and just nobody has to know about it. And if you use it in the right context, you could actually really, really work on some things that you weren't able to work on with any of the psychiatric meds, or any of the other drugs, because they numb you. They don't heal you. They just make you forget things. And magic mushrooms, I will say, like, half of my life, I think, like my later successes are due to the healing that I had through both cannabis and magic mushrooms. I finally, was able to love myself, and I started connecting with people that I thought I had burned bridges. And it turned out that a lot of faulty relationships in my life were due because I wasn't ready for intimacy. I wasn't ready to reach out to people. And, you end up realizing that you cause sometimes a lot of your own problems because of your own fear and your inability to connect, and are like coping mechanisms. And once those are opened up, you realize you're like, wow, okay, I was sort of a jerk, and they'll probably like the new me. Like, and
Yeah.
they do. They're like, oh, this is you without your mask on. And a lot of us carry that mask, and we think like that makes us better. Like, oh, people don't know the real horrible me. Like, I'm a gargoyle underneath. But actually, like, our mask is what is ugly, and we need to take off the mask, because who we are and who we're created is such a joy. We're put on this earth for a reason, and it is to feel love. It is to experience love and share it with everything that is here. So you are loved. You're amazing, and cannabis and psychedelics are a tool that can help you find your true self. And I know that's scary. It may be something that other people tell you should never ever explore, but it's a decision for yourself, and you deserve the best life for you.
I love that. I so love that. I think I've definitely had some very intimate moments with myself, on just mushrooms, on cannabis, to be able to look at myself and allow myself to really see. Like, I've had moments where I looked at the mirror and I was like, wow, when was the last time I really just looked at myself and appreciated the things I've gone through and forgiven myself for some of the things I've gone through, and because yeah, when I'm just like in my regular day, I'm like so on the go, go, go. And in those moments, I've allowed myself to surrender to control, because I'm always trying to control everything. I find myself doing that. But in those moments, I'm just like, you know what, Nat? Relax. This is a moment for you. you know? And so I think that that's super powerful. And also, like you said, the community that you can create afterwards or even in the process, and also knowing the intention for even doing it. Like I've never gone into, or I'm not going to say I've never, because it's true. I have gone to use drugs before, and alcohol. I mean, you know, I'm going to include alcohol. I think we've all been there, where we use it to numb ourselves. You know, we go
Mhm.
through a breakup, we get hurt by our parents, we, whatever it is, you know, we lose our job and we go numb, right? We go numb ourselves. But again, knowing at what point to stop, and to know why you're doing it, and knowing that there is a moment to use it in a way to, for self-discovery, I think is very powerful, you know, and I think is very useful.
Yeah,
um
and I just want to add here that if you have ever gone through a horrible breakup or you're about to, it's very interesting the insight that psychedelics or even, you know, cannabis can give you, because instead of replaying what went wrong or I wasn't good enough or I'll be lonely forever, like that seems like the worst experience. Breakups are really, really hard. No matter how short of a time you were with someone, it feels like it's the end of the world. It's a disaster when it's happening. And for some of us, it takes a long time to get over. But I really think that psychedelics can help you put perspective on it. And it's really helpful for me. I'm actually going through a divorce now. So it actually allowed me to realize, I was like, it's nobody's fault. You'll both be better in the end and it'll be okay. And I was just like, I was like bawling, but it was like
oh,
tears of joy, because like I would have been trying to fix something that was broken and not for the best of us for months. And that's what I do. Like I help people, and you know, when you're a healer, you try to heal, you know, even your partner. And sometimes it's okay to say, we had a great time and now it's time for us to go grow, you know, maybe with another partner, whatever it is, and let go. And I think psychedelics can really help you let go of things that you're hyper attached to. And that's what causes a lot of pain in our life, right? We're so attached to an outcome. If I don't get that job, I'm a loser, like my life will be over. You know, if I don't get that partner, that somebody rejects me, you know. And once we are able to detach ourselves from a situation and just go with the flow of the universe, we don't know what it has in store for us. Like pretty much the universe always has our back if we're like, I trust you, right? So the
totally.
problem is we are trying to control, just like you said, because it makes us feel good. We're like, oh, I did this, or I worked really hard and I can, you know, I kept onto this relationship, or I worked really hard for this job. Sometimes it really is about saying, maybe you could work really hard for that promotion or that job, or you could have relaxed and let see where things happen, and another door opened that was even better, but you were so focused on that door you didn't even see the other door, right? So psychedelics really help you just realize that you are part of a much bigger world, right? Like there's an entire universe out there, right? We're a part of nature, we're part of so many beings on this planet. To just relax. It's going to be okay. Like
Yeah.
that's a huge thing. Like it's the simple things, right? It's connection, right? We are part of something so much bigger. And when we're trapped in the rat race of life, it really is hard for us to realize that we're loved and we are part of something so much bigger that we have no control over, and to just embrace it and know that we're here for the ride.
Totally. And you know, I think that this is all really important as well, because again, with social media, the internet, with all these expectations, as we see the growth and expansion of our possibilities get greater, I think the pressure on ourselves and from society just gets stronger as well, which again go back to like the anxiety builds. And we need to take a moment to slow down. And I think that's a beautiful part about cannabis. It helps us slow down. You know,
Mhm.
even just CBD alone, it will allow the anxiety to just tone it down, and allow us to take a moment to really analyze what's going on in a different perspective, you know? Uh, yeah, I think that that's super powerful and needed. So, what else do you think we can do to, or what have you done to kind of create a community around this? And maybe you can share a little bit on that.
Sure. So again, I really think the practice of doing cannabis and plugging into yourself, flowing through exercise and really letting go of all that tension and stress is really important. And that's why we created our platform. So our platform has instructors from all over the world, mostly United States and Canada right now, because cannabis isn't super legal everywhere else. Like they have it sometimes in a very medical way or CE only. So we're trying to connect everyone across the world and have people be able to say, okay, I want to do a cannabis and yoga class, but I live in Kentucky. If they happen to have cannabis, they can go consume and, turn on our app and be able to practice their yoga session with people around the world, and then be able to talk about how cannabis is helping them. And
Wait,
be
wait,
able
you said
to
you have an
connect.
app? You have an app?
Yeah, so
Oh,
that's what Fused Health is. So we're building parts of it. So we have some of it, like we do things over Zoom, just like this. So we have coaches that can talk about using cannabis or CBD to help you with alcohol or drug addiction. We have people that can help you with anxiety. There are coaches all over the world. So I actually trained a lot of the cannabis health coaches and doctors and nurses. So I've been in this field for a very long time. My very first paper was published in 2006, which goodness is 13 years ago now. Even though I look young, by the way, cannabis helps you look younger. So if you're not convinced,
yeah, I'm not gonna ask your age in case you don't want to say it, but you look great. Yeah, like you look great.
Yeah. But really it's when you're not stressed out, you don't get older, really. But we have this platform that has been built on so many years of research, working with so many patients. I mean, I've helped people from everyone with, terminal cancer, but I've worked a lot with mental health, with women's health, with addiction. Because I even share this actually. My little brother died of alcohol and Oxycontin overdose when he was 20 in college. And even though I was a drug addiction scientist, I'm like, don't do these drugs, do these drugs. And he was afraid to use cannabis because he had gotten a bipolar diagnosis. And, they were like, don't do that together. And so he just, abused alcohol and it, ended up dying. And so for me, realizing that even if you have all the facts, if you're stressed out or you're feeling alone, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling labeled, you're going to consume drugs in a way that's not going to be ideal for you, right? And so it's always been about harm reduction for me. So finding ways that we can train other people to help them use CBD, for example, to use less alcohol and drugs, if that's something that they're looking for, is very, very real. And I'm actually helping train coaches across the country. I'm trying to work with clinics because a lot of people don't have options, right? You can't afford rehab, if you are a struggling drug addict, unless your parents are rich. And do rehabs actually work for people? That's another good question, right? You can spend $100,000 on rehabs and still, come out and, take drugs again and be off the wagon, per se. So, these solutions that we have in place aren't really helping a lot of people. So many people are dying. And I really think that, again, cannabis and CBD and even mushrooms might be a way for people to heal the trauma that is causing the drug abuse. It's never, the problem is never drug abuse. Problem is never like with an overweight person, with somebody eating. It's what is causing those behaviors. And it really is the lack of love you have for yourself and the trauma you're carrying, those bags. Like, goodness, some people are carrying like probably like 30 bags around with them. And you're like, goodness, can I take some of those, please? Like, I can help.
Yeah.
And goodness, I mean, the plant is your friend, and CBD thankfully is available everywhere. And I'll just touch on how it works too, because a lot of people don't understand. They just think cannabis is THC, right?
I could barely say the words in the beginning. Give me a little bit more.
Oh my goodness, yes, endocannabinoid, yeah. So we use a lot of abbreviations because it's easier. It's a lot of tongue-tied stuff. Endocannabinoid system is actually the neurotransmitter system in your brain, and neurotransmitters are actually the signals between two brain cells. So if these are two cells, like there's little, think about like little sprinkles coming out between them, and that's how they talk to each other. So you have all different types of neurotransmitters that are out there. They have dopamine, which we know is released when we have sex, we eat, or we do drugs. So we love dopamine. It's very rewarding and pleasurable. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that helps us eat, and it's released by Prozac and, you know, a whole bunch of different other activities. So it also makes us feel good, feel sleepy. We have different neurotransmitters that turn on things, turn off things, but the endocannabinoid system is actually the fine dial that determines how much of all of these different neurotransmitters we have. So some people will have a serotonin deficiency, and that's why they're depressed, right? So when they take cannabis, it actually elevates the amount of dopamine they have, the amount of serotonin they have, and helps like completely change the brain chemistry. And so that's why it's more effective than just taking a Prozac. It actually works on all the brain regions with all the imbalances. And some people have more than just a serotonin imbalance. They have a dopamine imbalance, which is why they're abusing drugs in the first place. You know, if you don't make enough of that neurotransmitter and you don't feel good, like normal things aren't making you feel good. If you're eating, you don't feel good. If you're having sex, you don't feel good. You're like, but I did this drug and I feel great. Well, you're going to keep doing that because as humans, we need to feel good. We need to feel loved, right? And so the thing with cannabis is it helps people get off of drugs because it is actually elevating these brain levels. So we don't need those other drugs. We don't have cravings for things that are not good for us, whether it's sex, gambling, drugs, etc. Instead, it is actually just replacing those harmful drugs, and it's making us want them less too. So there's actual clinical research that shows CBD helps people drink less. It helps people use cocaine less, methamphetamine, heroin, even the prescription opioids. And so if you are on pain medications for chronic pain, which a lot of people are, or you're on antidepressants, or you're on anti-anxiety drugs, CBD has been shown to basically make everyone just need any type of drug less. So, I mean, even caffeine, it's very, very, very interesting how that's working. And it works in a whole bunch of different ways. I could talk probably an hour just on how CBD works, but just to let you know, CBD is safe. It does not cause a high. So if you are somebody who is like say recovering from addiction or trying to be sober, a lot of sober people are afraid of CBD and they're like, it's cannabis. It's going to make me high, or it's going to make me fall off the wagon, da, 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 da. And CBD, yes, it can come from cannabis. It can come from hemp. But it doesn't cause euphoria. It does not cause any of that. In fact, it makes you want drugs less. So it actually is someone in recovery's best friend. It also helps activate your serotonin receptors, which again, it's like CBD isn't just working on the cannabis system. It's actually binding to your serotonin receptor to do the same thing that antidepressants do, without fogging up your mind, without causing sexual side effects. Like, who wants to take a drug where you can't even orgasm, right? Like, that's half the antidepressants.
Yeah, there's like men that can't even like get an erection because they're on these antidepressants.
Yeah. One of my close friends in graduate school, she was like the Dr. Ruth of antidepressants and sexual effects. Like, all she did all day was like videotape like mice and rats having sex. No show. Weird jobs in science. And you're like, that was her gig. And she's like, this antidepressant, they don't want to have sex. This one, they don't want to have sex. None of these mice were having sex. I feel very bad for them. They're just like, well, let's cuddle. Yeah. So, but I mean, think about that. We're testing them in animals. We know that they harm our motivation to eat, to have sex, to do anything. And then we're giving them to people. And no wonder why people are killing themselves on antidepressants. I'm sorry, but you're missing out on life.
They're really not enjoying life. They're not enjoying life in the process. So I I didn't know this about cannabis and how it can actually help people get off of other drugs, and how it can really help them just build their own happiness in a sense, really create those inner chemicals to come back to life, And
life in color. That's what I call cannabis. I didn't know what life was really like until I experienced cannabis, and I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, imagine if you've been watching a black and white TV your entire life and you see a color movie for the very first time. It's got to be weird, right? Like, that's honestly what a lot of people feel when they've been depressed their whole life, or introverted, and they use cannabis in a way that again, you have to find a product that works for you. It won't be, so for some people it won't be like the first time they light up or something, like all of a sudden it's rainbows and unicorns. But if you find something that works for you, it is amazing. So there's hope for you. Like that's the biggest thing I give people. Like, please just, if you're lost, if you're down, if you are frustrated and, trapped in the medication cycle, consider cannabis, because I don't know what I would be doing right now if I haven't tapped into it. I don't know what kind of life I would be living, or if I would even be alive. I mean, to be honest, I was suicidal at points in my life. And with cannabis, I can't even remember the last time I felt that depressed, that a thought like that even went in my head. I mean, it's been, goodness, like maybe 8 years since like I've ever had like a suicidal thought. So thank God for cannabis. And be brave. If it works for you, tell other people, because there are people struggling and they're not as brave as you to talk about it. So talk to people.
I love that so much. Yes. To be able to talk about it. And I think that that's a big change maybe in your life, that it did allow you to talk about what you were going through. That we feel like we need to go through it all alone, and that only makes us feel more lonely. But it's like when you finally allow, again, it's all about the surrendering part, really letting go of that baggage and allowing yourself to be seen for the good and the bad. Social media has this effect, especially on young people, about, we need to look good. We have to have the perfect life. Mm-hmm. Oh, I got this new car, or I just went on a trip. But we're all going through our own shit, and we don't share that part. We don't share the ugly parts. And
I know all about being in the spotlight. I don't even think I touched on this, because it's like I've done so many random things in my life, but I was on television. So 10 years ago, I started on Big Brother, which was a show where I was on live cameras for like, I don't know, 2.5 months straight. And then I came out of that. And this was actually what caused me to be depressed, actually experiment with not so great drugs and other things, because I couldn't handle what was happening to me when I went from a nobody to, millions and millions of people around the world knowing who I am, who had watched me like eat Cheerios in the morning and like, like it basically like cyber stalking you. That's the show. Like they can just watch you for like 3 months straight, 24/7 while you're sleeping and everything. And for me, like to be on, all the news sites, forums, people all talking about me, like she needs a nose job, she needs this, that. Oh, do you see who she's dating? He's ugly. Like I was literally like being like, cyberbullied, every day. And I couldn't even wake up and look at Facebook. Like I would like shut down stuff. I'd be like, they think I'm ugly and stupid. And for a while I believed it, and here I am, I'm like, I have a PhD, I have everything else, but I'm going to let people on the internet tell me I'm not enough, right? And it sounds crazy. It literally sounds crazy. But when you hear like hundreds of people saying you're not enough, that overcomes the little voice on your head that says, but I am awesome. Like, okay.
Yeah, you got one cheerleader and you got like millions of bullies. Like,
And I mean, then that's when you're strong. And I understand not everyone has like 100 people saying you suck, but like, even if it's 5 people saying you suck, it hurts, and we have built this like wall around us where we all need approval from other people, especially, and this is the thing, is that approval from other people is so much more important to us if we lack that approval from our mom and our dad. And so that's why that hurts. Like some people, it doesn't hurt them at all. And other people, it truly hurts, especially if you didn't have a loving relationship at home. So, all I got to say is I've been through it. I've been there and it sucks. It's so much easier to say, you know what, I do suck, or like, no one is my friend, whatever, I'm going to drink myself to sleep or something like that. Like, or just be like negative towards yourself. But again, with cannabis, it helps you realize that all the people that are saying negative things in your life, they're saying it because they're also upset with their own life and they're not comfortable in their own skin, right? So the comments that are on social media, etc., don't really matter. The only thing that matters is your truth and your reality. And that's why connecting with yourself and understanding yourself better is really key. Because once you realize you're like, I'm part of the universe and I'm connected with everyone else, and my life is just as important as everyone else's life. Like no one's life is like more important, right? We're all in this together. We're like, my religious view actually is that like we're all like pieces of God, like we are God, right?
Yes.
And that's a weird, like that's not like a normal, you know, Catholic or Christian type of concept, but it was some concept that I felt guided to through my experience with cannabis and psychedelics. And it was actually something that was a lot more comfortable for me, because instead of looking for approval, even from, say, an external God, to realizing that I'm God, you are God, like we're all God, and we have to take care of each other and love each other, was much more comforting to me. And so again, some of these experiences, if you dive into cannabis or psychedelics, some of them might be scary, and that's why it's really important to reach out to people. For example, if you use psychedelics and use a dose that does cause like psychoactive experiences, right? You can, hallucinate or see things or think things that you're not comfortable with. There's actually coaches out there called integration coaches that will help guide you through those experiences. You're like, what does this mean? Like, almost like when you have a dream that's really weird and you're like, I need to interpret this dream. What did this mean? Like, I don't even feel like good about what that was, or like, why is my ex like on my dad's body? Like, you have these weird dreams. You can have some of those weird experiences on psychedelics and things like that. So it's important, if you do decide to go in those things, again, to have positive experiences. You can't just do these things and not think about them. I suggest, if you are going to, say, use cannabis and, contemplate things in your life or your direction in your life, keep a journal. Write down the thoughts that pop in your head and things like that. Or how did I feel, before or after? What was my attention? Did I, reach that journey? How did it go for me, right? Same with, if you explored psychedelics, because it's all important. If you just take substances without intention, it's not going to have the right, result for you. So it really is about tracking, your feelings, journaling. That really, really does help with a lot of, different experiences. It's been helpful for me and with the clients that I help coach. So again, make sure if you are going to go on these journeys that you find a good guide for you.
Yeah, I think that that's really important too. Being surrounded by the people that are actually going to nurture you and like help you, with the right intention. Because again, I can either call my friend after a breakup and be like, girl, like, I just broke up with him. Let's like, and she's gonna be like, okay, let's go out. Let's go have some drinks. Let's get fucked up. Let's forget about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can have those other friends that are like, okay, cool. I'll bring a bottle of wine and we'll sit at home and just like talk about it and like really go through this. It's like you can do both. You can use it as like, to numb, like we were talking about, or if you nurture yourself with the people around you first and allow yourself to really open up and be seen, then it can be a beautiful, loving experience with yourself. I think that that's really important. So
yeah, and I do want to point out that I'm non-judgmental about drug use. Again, it's all about how you experience things and whether it feels right for you or not. So I think that adults have the ability to choose for them what experiences they do. And I will even say I've used mushrooms and cannabis both medicinally and recreationally. I have no problem going out to a music concert and feeling a little bit elevated. So it's all about the choices you make and feeling comfortable with them, and knowing if you've ever crossed a line that maybe you need some help with. So again, and enjoy and know that you are most powerful being out there, and you can make good choices, and the choices that you do choose will bring you great happiness. So hopefully plants and mushrooms will bring you all the joy that you need from life.
100%. So maybe we can finish off with again, letting our people know how else they can find you, and also the free gift or just like the little bonus that you've given us, because I think that there's so much more that people can still explore, and they can get some guidance from you and your people, because again, like you said, we can go on hours and hours discussing all the different forms of ways we can use these amazing things. But so how can we get to know you a little bit better?
Sure. So you can actually find out a little bit more about how your endocannabinoid system is working and potentially book some coaching sessions with us at Infused Health. .com. So infused health. I'm not going to spell that. You're going to have a link, right?
Yeah, yeah, it'll
Okay,
be
cool.
down here.
Yeah, awesome. And then my book, Vitamin Weed, I really think that it's a great guide for understanding what the cannabinoids are, how we use them for different conditions, whether it's chronic pain, whether it's period pain, anxiety, addiction, etc. My book dives in a little bit about how these drugs work in comparison with pharmaceutical drugs and how we can use them in addition to healthy diet, to stress management, even, combining them with sex to really explore all of their full benefits. So my book, Vitamin Weed, I'm offering with a 50% discount, and the link will be with this video. And I really hope that you take the opportunity to read it. We have a great Facebook group too, where you can ask me any questions. So you have direct connection with me if you purchase the book, and I'm there. And we have lots of other coaches in there that can answer some questions, especially if you're confused about what your next step is.
Yay. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. I
Thank
love this
you.
whole experience, and I can't wait to see what else we create. All right.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.